So hi, I'm Bernie, and I am your professor for the project management course and the web development program. So this is project management. And people always ask me, what kind of project management do we teach? And the fact is that we teach web project management. And the reason why I emphasize the word web here is because web project management is often very different from traditional project management in the fact that in building websites and building any kind of digital experience, we don't have anything physical, right? There's nothing to hold. Right? So for example, if I were building a bridge, and the bridge was crossing a river. So here's the bank of the river here, and here's the other bank of the river. And I wanted to build a bridge over it, right? It would be very easy for me to go, okay, well, here's the start of my bridge, and I'm going to move across. And anybody could tell you that this is an unfinished bridge. And so I would need to go over, and here's my finished bridge. The thing with web development is we don't have this. We don't have this physicality. We have a box that is a computer screen of some sort, and the box can be infinitely wide, and it can be infinitely high, right? We can have an infinite number of pages. We can have an infinite number of copies. Right? And so the challenge for project management and web development is how do we take this infinity and constrain it and give it reason or rationality so that we can look at it and say, we're done. And this is the issue with web development, is the sense of being done. How do we know when we're finished? How do we know? How do we tell our clients? How do we tell our other developers? How do we tell the world that this is finished and ready to go? And that's the big issue for web development. If we were building bridges, if we were making shoes, if we were making coffee cups, we know when we're finished. I have a coffee cup, I can put coffee into it, it doesn't spill out. If I build a bridge, right? If the bridge doesn't come to the very end, we're not done, right? But in dealing with this, infinite number of everything for websites, this is what we're looking at. What is done? And that's what web project management is trying to figure out. The web project management course asks or answers the question, where do projects come from? And so this is a key part of the process is, when in reading project management textbooks and everything, they always start after you get the project. So what we're trying to do in this course is we want to not only manage a project, we want to know where projects come from. And the primary way where projects come from is through a sales cycle. Okay? And the sales cycle is sort of a sequence of events that are reasonably predictable that businesses use to see how well they're doing. And the sales cycle in web development and the web development process revolves around a few steps and a few documents. The first document is called an RFP, or a request for proposals. So in the class, we'll go through fairly simple and complex RFPs, whereas the web developers, what is it we need to know about these documents? What are the things, what are the tips, the tricks, the traps that are usually in documents like this? So we start with an RFP, or a request for proposal. So that's step one. Step two is the actual proposal. So in this class, we'll be asking you to write a web proposal that's going to sell the client on the idea that their website should be redesigned, okay? Redesigning websites is probably one of the biggest growth areas for web development, and so this is where we're going to focus our activities in this class. So part of this is, how do you write a proposal that's going to effectively represent you and your organization as a company that should be trusted to spend the money on, and here are our ideas that we see that are critical for the client to consider when adopting our proposal. The third step of the situation is called the close, right? And so how this works is you've read the RFP, you've written the proposal, your client's interested, and they're saying, man, we want to talk to you. We're thinking about following your proposal. Come and talk to us. And the close is always the hardest part, right? The close is hard because you have to ask for the business. Right? And the thing about asking for the business is people often don't do this. They don't look at the business and say, okay, I have to ask for it. It's like asking somebody out for a date, right? You get really nervous, you get really anxious because you're worried that they might say no. But this is a very important part of the process to recognize, because it happens throughout business of having to do this. So this is a tough part. After the close, we have the contract. Okay, and so this is the end of the sales cycle, is the contract. The proposal describes the project. The close gets you the work, it gets you the money. The contract describes the relationship between the web development agency or the individual and the client. And so this is a completely different document from the proposal. Many web developers will just sign the proposal as if it were a contract, but the contract, though, is a completely different document. It's legally binding. It has traditional and new language that you need to understand. And it is also, if things go wrong between you and your client, and sometimes they do, you need the contract there to ensure that you're protected and that your client's protected, because you never know what may go wrong. So when we're looking at learning outcomes for the course, right, being able to read and evaluate these documents is one of them. Writing the proposal, so this is sort of the major assignment in the class. Okay, so this will be one of the things that you'll do, is write a proposal, and this is what we'll work on week to week. This is a team document, so it will be you and a team of students, fellow students, and through the course of the semester, these are the people you'll get to know and get to understand. You know, web development is done by teams of people throughout the world. Excuse me. You're going to start doing that. And so web development isn't something that you do on your own. This is something you do with a team, and you're always doing it with a client. So this is one of your major assignments. The second major assignment is related to the close, and this is a presentation. So with the presentation, you now have to not just write about it, you have to stand in front of a crowd and say what's on your mind. So the presentation gives you a chance to ask for the business in front of a critical audience. And we usually, it's usually the class. We invite people to come in. Sometimes we'll invite employers who work with us and all that. So these are sort of the major learning outcomes from the project management class in the web development program.